For what, 2,500 years, there's been this one book, kind of like a secret weapon for generals, CEOs, you name it. It's The Art of War, right? An ancient guide to conflict that is, believe it or not, more relevant today than ever. So I want you to forget everything you think you know about what it means to go to battle, because today we're going to dig into the timeless wisdom that shows us what a real victory looks like. So right off the bat, Sun Tzu just throws our whole idea of success out the window. He basically says, look, if everyone can see your victory, if it's obvious to the common person, then you're not actually that great of a strategist. Ouch, right? The real genius, he says, is in the moves nobody sees. It's about those quiet wins, the ones you secure long before anyone even realizes there's a fight. All right, Section 1, the General's Test, a lesson in absolute authority. So, how did Sun Tzu prove his methods weren't just talk? Well, that brings us to this legendary and honestly pretty brutal story about how he showed a very skeptical king what his principles could really do. So you've got this king, King Holu, who's read Sun Tzu's book, and he basically says, okay, this all sounds great on paper, but can you actually do it? Can we maybe test this out? But to really put Sun Tzu on the spot, he offers up 180 of his palace concubines. We're talking about women with zero, and I mean zero, military training. This was the ultimate test. And Sun Tzu doesn't even blink. He accepts. He splits the women into two companies, and in a really smart move, he appoints the king's two absolute favorites as the leaders. Then he gives them the simplest commands you can imagine. Face right, face left, about face. The instructions could not have been clearer.
So the drum sounds for the very first command.
Now, instead of getting mad and yelling at them, Sun Tzu does something pretty remarkable. He blames himself. This is his first big leadership lesson right here. If your orders aren't clear, if your team doesn't get it, well, that's not on them. The fault lies with the general. It's on you. Okay, so he patiently goes over the commands one more time, making sure everything is crystal clear. He gives the order again, and once more they just laugh. They can't take it seriously, so the drill fails for a second time. Okay, but now, things are different. Sun Tzu is thinking, if my orders are clear, but the soldiers still disobey, then it's not my fault anymore. He's done his part. Now, he says, the fault lies with their officers. This is where things get serious and accountability becomes everything. And what he does next is absolutely shocking. The king is watching in horror as Sun Tzu orders the two leaders, remember the king's favorites, to be executed. Right there on the spot. The message, as brutal as it was unmistakable. Discipline is not a suggestion, it is absolute. And you know what? After that, every single drill was performed with flawless precision. All right, next up, know thy enemy, know thyself. Understanding the foundations of strategy. You see, that really harsh lesson in discipline, it points to something deeper. Sun Tzu's whole philosophy starts with this idea that to know your enemy, you have to first and most importantly, know yourself. And that means understanding your own limits and the truly crippling cost of going to war. You know, it's easy to think of Sun Tzu as some kind of warmonger, but he was really a realist. He lays out the economics of conflict in brutal detail. He says things like, you know, the homes of the people will be stripped bare. 3/10 of their income? Gone. 4/10 of the whole government's budget spent on stuff like broken down chariots and armor. The point is, war is just ruinously expensive. So what's the answer to this massive expense? Well, to Sun Tzu, it's simple. It's just logical. A wise general doesn't burn through their own resources. No, they make a point of foraging on the enemy. They live off the land, the enemy's land. It's a pragmatic calculation. Section 3, the art of deception. This is where we see that endless maneuvers can come from very simple elements. Okay, this is where we really get into the genius of Sun Tzu's thinking. It's not just about who has the bigger army or better supply lines. It's about creativity. It's about psychology. It's about how you can create infinite possibilities from just a couple of simple building blocks. See, in any fight, Sun Tzu says there are really only two kinds of attacks. You've got the direct method, that's the obvious head-on engagement everyone sees coming. And then you have the indirect method. That's the surprise, the flank, the feint. One is the punch you see, the other is the one you don't. And here's where he gets almost poetic about it. He says, think about it. There are only 5 musical notes, but from them come more melodies than we could ever listen to. There are only 5 primary colors, but they create every hue we can see. And just 5 tastes create all the flavors in the world. It's the same idea. When you combine the direct and the indirect, you suddenly have an endless series of maneuvers at your disposal. That's the core of his tactical thinking. A master strategist becomes like water, right? Constantly shifting form, flowing between the direct and indirect, creating this relentless, unpredictable series of moves that just keeps the enemy completely off balance. All right, Section 4, Victory Without Battle, or How to Achieve the Acme of Excellence. Everything we've talked about so far builds up to this, Sun Tzu's idea of the absolute pinnacle of skill, the highest form of victory. And I'll give you a spoiler, it has nothing to do with actually fighting. This just turns our whole modern idea of winning completely on its head. You know that big dramatic battle where you crush your enemy and the whole empire is singing your praises? Sun Tzu says, yeah, that's not the acme of excellence. It's not the best you can do. He says a true victory should be like lifting a single autumn hair or seeing the sun and moon. It doesn't take brute strength or super sharp eyesight. Why? Because it feels effortless. The real work was done way before. The master strategist has already positioned things so perfectly that the win was guaranteed before the conflict even started. And that's the ultimate goal. The supreme art is to win by positioning yourself so well that the battle is already over before it even begins. It's about subduing your enemy without ever having to fight. You win with intelligence, with planning, with psychological advantage, so that a physical fight just becomes totally unnecessary. So let's talk about your modern battlefields and how we can apply this ancient wisdom today. I mean, why are we still talking about a 2,500-year-old book on war? Well, it's because these exact same principles, strategy, discipline, psychology, they apply to pretty much every challenge you and I face right now. Yeah, this isn't some dusty old book you find in the back of a library. Think of it more like a living, breathing manual for navigating any kind of competition. For centuries, people have been turning to these pages for that timeless wisdom on strategy, on leadership, and just on human nature. I mean, the foreword of this book says, it speaks to the warrior, the leader, the CEO, the strategist, and even the salesman in all of us. And that's the real key. Subduing the enemy without fighting. What is that? Well, in business, that's creating a product so good that competitors don't even try to compete. In a negotiation, it's getting a deal where everyone walks away feeling like they won. These principles, they are absolutely universal. So I want to leave you with one final question, one that comes straight from the heart of this timeless work. Take a second and think about your own goals, your challenges, your ambitions. In your life, right now, where is your battlefield?